My brother found me sitting on the curb outside a Walgreens at 7 in the morning, still in my pajamas, holding my daughter against my chest like she was the only thing keeping me upright. She was 14 months old and had her father's dark eyes and absolutely no idea that her mama hadn't slept in 3 days. He pulled up in his truck, rolled down the window, and just stared at me for a second. "Why are you outside? Where's your car? Where's your coat?" I looked up at him, and I didn't even know where to start. "My sister-in-law has the car. She said I wasn't insured to drive it anymore." He was out of the truck before I finished the sentence. That morning was the end of something, and also the beginning. But to explain how I ended up on that curb, I have to go back about 5 months to the day my husband left for Dubai. My husband, I'll call him my husband because that's what he was and still is, took a contract position with a construction management firm overseas. 8 months, good money, the kind of opportunity that doesn't come twice. We talked about it for weeks before he signed anything. We had a daughter, a rental apartment in Columbus, Ohio, a joint checking account with a decent cushion, and a plan. He'd send money home every 2 weeks. I'd keep working part-time at the pediatric clinic where I'd been for 3 years. We'd save, pay down the car, maybe put something toward a down payment when he got back. It was supposed to be hard but manageable. We'd done long distance before we got married. I told him I could do it. His mother had a different idea. She called 2 days after he boarded his flight. She said she'd been thinking, and she was worried about me being alone with a baby in an apartment. She had a house in Westerville, 20 minutes away, a spare room, and she wanted to help. She framed it as a question, but there was a current underneath it that didn't feel optional. I told her I appreciated it, but I was fine. She called again the next day, and the day after that. My husband called me on day 4 and gently mentioned that his mother had reached out to him, that she was concerned, and wouldn't it make more sense to have family nearby? He wasn't pushing exactly, but I could hear that he'd already halfway agreed to it without meaning to. I said I'd think about it. 2 weeks later, I was loading boxes into her spare room. His mother is a woman who presents warmth the way some people present a bill. It looks like a gift until you read the fine print. She brought me tea in the mornings. She held my daughter while I showered. She told me the spare room was mine for as long as I needed, that I was family, that she just wanted us to feel safe. The house was nice. 3 bedrooms, a finished basement, a big backyard. His sister lived there too. She'd moved back in after a breakup the year before and showed no signs of leaving. The sister was cordial, in the way that people are cordial when they are not actually happy you're there. For the first 2 weeks, I told myself I'd made the right call. My daughter loved the backyard. I was sleeping better than I had in the apartment. His mother cooked dinner every night and always made enough for 3. Then small things started. The spare room was technically the craft room, and his mother mentioned just once very casually that it would be helpful if I kept my things a little more contained because she sometimes needed space to work on projects. I reorganized everything. A week later, she said it again. I reorganized again. She started asking where I was going when I left the house. Not confrontationally, just conversationally. "Oh, you're going out? Just to the clinic? What time will you be back?" The kind of questions that sound like caring until they happen every single day and you realize you're accounting for your movements to another adult in a house that isn't yours. She offered to watch my daughter on the days I worked, which was generous, and also meant I no longer had reason to drop my daughter at daycare, which meant I cancelled the daycare spot, which I would later understand was not an accident. About 6 weeks in, she mentioned that the car insurance on my husband's vehicle, the car I'd been driving, the car that was titled in his name, the car we shared, had come up for renewal. She said she'd been helping him manage some of the household paperwork while he was away since international calls were expensive and the time difference was difficult. She said the new policy was sorted, but she'd had to make some adjustments, and she just wanted me to know that she was listed as the primary on the policy now for administrative reasons. She said it didn't change anything practically. I didn't push back. I should have. I know that now. But she said it so plainly, so logically, with her hands wrapped around her coffee mug, and that particular calm that made you feel like you were the unreasonable one for even hesitating. I want to explain something because I've read enough comments on videos like mine to know what people think. They think, "Why didn't you just leave?" You had a job. You had a car. You had a phone. What were you doing? What I was doing was being slowly reorganized. That's the only way I can describe it. It didn't happen in one big dramatic moment. It happened in increments so small that each one seemed almost reasonable. And when you're sleep deprived and your husband is 9 time zones away and the person doing it to you is the person who tells you every day that she loves you like a daughter, your brain keeps searching for the charitable explanation. Because the alternative is terrifying. By month 3, the increments had added up to this. I had $50 a week in cash that his mother allocated from the joint account. She had my husband's login because she'd been helping with bills. I no longer had the debit card. She'd mentioned that it had been flagged for a suspicious transaction, which turned out to be a $12 charge from a streaming service I'd forgotten to cancel, and a new one was issued to the house address, and she was holding it for me. My phone was on a family plan that his mother paid for, and she had the account credentials. My car insurance was in her name. Every paycheck from the clinic went into the joint account. His paychecks from Dubai went into the joint account. His mother managed the joint account. I was 31 years old, employed, and completely dependent on a woman who smiled at me every morning over coffee. The moment I realized it was a system, and not just dysfunction, was the day I tried to open a separate checking account at the credit union near the clinic. The banker pulled up my credit and told me there was a note on my file, a recent inquiry, a credit card application in my name that I had not made, was an address in Westerville that wasn't mine. The credit card had been opened 3 months earlier. The limit was $4,000. The current balance was $3,812. I sat in that chair and I felt the floor shift. I went home and I didn't say anything, because I needed to understand what I was dealing with before I made any move. I had a 14-month-old. I had nowhere to go and no access to money that I could actually reach. I had a husband who, when I tried twice to tell him things felt off, had said that his mother was just old-fashioned and that I should try harder to connect with her. So I started paying attention differently. I started writing things down. I kept a notes app on my phone with dates, amounts, exact quotes, the credit card, the insurance, the debit card I never received. Every time she mentioned money, I wrote it down with the time and date. I took screenshots of the credit inquiry letter. I photographed the credit card statement that came in the mail, which she'd opened and left on the kitchen counter with no explanation. I wasn't ready to call anyone yet, but I needed a record. 4 months in, his sister crossed a line that his mother hadn't yet. I came home from work to find my laptop open on the kitchen table. I always locked it. It required a password. His sister was in the kitchen making lunch, and she didn't even look up when I walked in. I asked if she'd been on my laptop. She said she'd needed to print something and her printer was broken. I said my laptop required a password. She shrugged and said she'd found it written on a sticky note in my room. I stood in the kitchen and looked at her and understood that I was not a guest in this house. I was a resource. That night, I emailed my brother from a private browser window. I told him I needed help, but I needed him not to call or text me, just to email this address. I told him it was important. He wrote back within the hour. I told him everything, not in order, not coherently. I just typed the whole 5 months out and hit send. The credit card, the account access, the insurance, the laptop, the $50 a week. He wrote back, "Don't do anything. Don't tip them off. I'm figuring something out. I love you." My brother is 4 years older than me. He's not a dramatic person. He doesn't raise his voice. He works in commercial real estate and he has a very particular way of moving through problems. Methodical, quiet, then decisive. He called our dad that night. Our dad is retired, but spent 25 years as a CPA, and he has a friend who's been a consumer fraud attorney for longer than I've been alive. Within 48 hours, my brother had spoken to the attorney. Within a week, the attorney had filed a request to freeze any further activity on the fraudulent credit card and had documentation ready to bring to law enforcement. They did not tell me the details in advance because they were worried I would seem different, that his mother would notice. They just told me to keep doing exactly what I was doing. Keep writing things down. Keep being normal. Keeping being normal was the hardest thing I have ever done. I set my daughter's cereal on her tray every morning and I watched his mother pour her coffee and smile at me. And I smiled back and I thought, I know what you did. I know exactly what you did. The morning my brother found me outside the Walgreens was the morning I'd tried to leave. His mother had come to me the night before and told me very calmly that she'd spoken to my husband, who was now in his final 2 months overseas, and that they'd agreed it made more financial sense for me to leave my part-time job and focus on the baby. She presented it as a gift. Less stress, more time with my daughter. She'd take care of everything, she said. She always took care of everything. Something in me snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I said I was going to call my husband directly to discuss it, and I picked up my phone. She put her hand over mine. She said there was no need to alarm him with things that were already handled. She said she thought I was tired and maybe I needed a good night's sleep. I went to bed and I lay there in the dark and I thought, if I quit my job, I lose the last thing that is mine. I lose the last reason I have to leave this house every day. I lose the last income stream that isn't filtered through her. At 5 in the morning, I got up, got my daughter dressed, packed the diaper bag, and walked out the front door. I had $23 in cash and no car. I walked 6 blocks to the Walgreens. I bought a coffee and a banana, and I sat on the curb, and I emailed my brother. He was there in 40 minutes. He didn't ask a lot of questions. He put us in the truck, turned the heat on, handed my daughter a granola bar from the glove box, and started driving. He called our dad from the road. She's with me, he said. We're going to your place. He drove 90 minutes to our dad's house in Worthington. My dad was waiting in the driveway. He hugged me for a long time without saying anything. Then he brought us inside and made pancakes and put my daughter in front of cartoons and sat down at the kitchen table with a legal pad and said, "Okay, tell me everything from the beginning." The attorney joined by phone. I talked for almost 2 hours. My dad took notes. My brother sat across from me, and every time I stopped, because I was embarrassed or because it felt stupid to have let it go this far, he just looked at me and said, "Keep going." I kept going. My husband came home 6 weeks later, 2 weeks ahead of schedule. My brother had emailed him directly, not through his mother's phone, directly to his work email, and told him there was a serious legal situation involving his family and his wife, and he needed to hear it before he landed. He sent him the documentation, all of it. My husband called me from the airport in Frankfurt. I answered, and there was silence for a moment, and then he said, "Why didn't you tell me?" I said I tried, twice. I said he told me she was just old-fashioned. He didn't say anything for a long time. "I'll be home in 16 hours, he said. "I'm so sorry." He came to my dad's house directly from the airport. He didn't stop at his mother's first. He walked in, carrying his bags with jet lag in his eyes, and he sat across from me at my dad's kitchen table, and he said, "Tell me everything." I told him everything. He cried. I don't know if I expected that. He's not someone who cries easily. But he sat at my dad's kitchen table and cried, and then he pulled it together and called the attorney himself. The credit card fraud case was prosecuted. His mother had opened 3 accounts in my name over the course of 4 months, the one I'd found, and 2 others I hadn't yet discovered. Total fraudulent charges, $11,400. His sister had been aware of at least one of them and had used the card directly 4 times, including a $380 charge at a furniture store. They were both charged with identity theft and financial fraud. His mother was also charged with unauthorized access to a financial account because the joint account access had been given under a specific scope and she had exceeded it substantially. His mother received 18 months probation, mandatory restitution, and a permanent notation on her credit record. She will be paying back every dollar. His sister pled to a lesser charge and received 12 months probation and community service. She also lost her job. Her employer ran a background check when the charges became public and her position required financial trustworthiness. The court ordered full restitution. We have received partial payment already. The attorney expects the remainder within the year. My husband and I are in counseling, not because our marriage is over, it's not, but because there is a lot to work through, and we are both committed to working through it. He owns what happened. He knows his instinct was to minimize what I was telling him, and that minimizing had consequences, and he is sitting with that. That's not easy for him. And I'm not going to pretend it is, but he's doing it. My daughter is 2 now. She has no memory of any of this, which is both a mercy and a reminder of what I was protecting. I want to say something to anyone who reads this and thinks, I would never let that happen. I'd be out the door the first time someone tried to take my car. Maybe you would. I believe that about myself too, before I lived it. What I know now is that financial abuse doesn't announce itself. It comes in the form of someone who loves you or claims to, offering to help. It comes with tea in the morning and dinner on the table and a woman who tells you that you are family. It comes slowly enough that every individual step seems almost defensible, until you look up one day and you are sitting on a curb at 7 in the morning with $23 and a baby on your hip, wondering how you got there. The thing that saved me wasn't some dramatic act of courage. It was writing things down. It was one email to my brother at 5 in the morning. It was him showing up in 40 minutes in his truck. Know who your person is. The one you can send a quiet email to when you can't make a phone call. The one who shows up before you finish explaining. Everyone needs that person. My brother is mine. I don't take that for granted anymore. I think about the version of me who sat on that curb a lot. Pajamas, $23, baby on my hip, coffee going cold. She didn't look like someone who'd been robbed. She looked like someone who'd just run out of fight. What I understand now, looking back, is that none of what happened to me was an accident. Actions have weight. My mother-in-law made a choice every single time she moved money, opened a card, took a password. My sister-in-law made a choice every time she used what wasn't hers. And I made choices too, choices that for a long time I was ashamed of. The choice to stay quiet. The choice to give the benefit of the doubt one more time. The choice to believe that someone who made dinner every night couldn't also be destroying me. But here's what I've had to sit with. The consequences didn't just fall on them. They fell on me too, for a while, because I let discomfort override my own clear thinking. I knew something was wrong by week 3. I felt it. I kept overriding it with politeness, with exhaustion, with the fear of being wrong. That's not weakness, it's human. But it cost me months I won't get back, and a level of financial damage that took a long time to repair. What you ignore doesn't stay small. It compounds. The thing that finally changed everything wasn't dramatic. It was a notes app. It was dates and amounts and exact quotes I started recording when I finally let myself believe what I was seeing. That was the moment I stopped hoping the situation would resolve itself and started using my own mind to solve it. Not emotionally, practically. Document, preserve, act. My dad always said the difference between a problem and a crisis is information. A problem you have facts about, a crisis you're still in the dark. I finally chose to have facts. And my brother, I think about what it took for me to send that email. It wasn't bravery in any movie sense. It was just one moment where I was more afraid of doing nothing than of asking for help. He drove 40 minutes in the dark and didn't ask me to explain myself before he turned the heat on. That kind of steady, unconditional showing up. That's what it looks like when someone has built their character over a lifetime of showing up. He didn't have to think about it. He just did it. I want to be that person for my daughter someday. What my husband had to reckon with was harder in some ways. He had to look at the moments he minimized me and understand that minimizing someone you love is its own kind of harm. He's doing that work. It's not comfortable for him, and I don't need it to be. What I need is that he keeps doing it. So far, he has. My daughter is 2. She doesn't know any of this. What she knows is that her parents are still in the same house, that her uncle comes over on Sundays, that her grandfather makes pancakes and lets her help crack the eggs. She knows she is safe. That is the only thing I was ever fighting for. If you are somewhere in the middle of what I was in the middle of, not at the beginning where you still think it'll get better, and not yet at the end where you have facts and a plan, please hear this. The moment you start writing things down is the moment you start writing things down is the moment you take your power back. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, in a notes app, with a date and a time. That's where it starts. That's where it started for me.